Sometimes your body knows you're slipping into a depressive episode long before your mind is ready to admit it. And the earliest signs are so subtle that most people don't see the danger until it's already pulled them under. It started on a Wednesday morning, the kind of morning that looked perfectly normal on the outside. Mila woke up to the soft hum of traffic outside her apartment window, the light seeping through her curtains in gentle strips. Nothing was wrong, but nothing felt right either. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her shoes for what felt like a minute. But the clock said 8. She was already late. Again. She brushed her teeth slowly, mechanically, like her body was running on a delayed signal. Everything felt just slightly off, as if her mind had stepped a few feet behind her. She didn't think much of it. Everyone has sluggish mornings. Everyone loses momentum sometimes. She grabbed her bag, whispered a quiet, "Come on, let's go," to herself, and stepped into the world like she was trying to merge lanes without looking. But the next day, the hesitation returned. Thicker, heavier. And then came something else. A quiet thought she didn't want to acknowledge. What if I'm slipping again? The last time she ignored the signs, the episode hit like a wave that dragged her into weeks of emotional numbness. She'd promised herself she'd never let it get that far again. She didn't know it yet, but her brain was already whispering warnings. And this time she needed to listen. Before a depressive episode fully develops, the brain often sends out early neurological signals, emotional, physical, and cognitive, long before mood collapses. Most people miss them because they assume depression arrives as sadness, when in reality, the brain's early warning signs are more about disruption. Disruption in energy rhythms, sleep patterns, emotional recovery, and cognitive processing. From a neuroscience perspective, depressive episodes often begin with changes in the brain's reward circuitry. Specifically the dopaminergic pathways that regulate motivation, anticipation, and the ability to feel pleasure. The prefrontal cortex, which helps with decision-making and focus, begins to quiet down. At the same time, the amygdala becomes more reactive, making stress feel louder and resilience feel weaker. None of this looks like classic depression at first. It looks like mild withdrawal, unusual irritability, difficulty initiating simple tasks, feeling mentally foggy or slower than usual. These are early disruptions in the mind-brain connection, the moment when the brain is struggling to maintain balance. When we can identify these signs early, we have a chance to intervene before the episode becomes overwhelming. And that is exactly what Mila was experiencing, long before she realized it. Over the next few days, Mila noticed the first sign, something so small she almost brushed it aside. Her emotional recovery time had slowed down. Before, if she received a stressful email at work, she would feel the tension spike and then settle after a few breaths. But now, the same email lingered like a weight on her chest. A simple comment from a coworker echoed longer than it should. Even tiny disappointments felt like they were sinking into her bones. She wasn't crying, she wasn't hopeless, she wasn't sad. But her emotional elasticity had shrunk. Most people don't recognize this as an early symptom of depression, but the brain does. When depression is forming, the amygdala becomes more reactive, and the prefrontal cortex, the part that helps regulate emotions, loses a bit of its grip. Emotional bumps that you would normally step over become obstacles. They stick. They stay. They stain. Mila didn't say anything to anyone. She just told herself, "I'm being dramatic." But that was sign number 1. Then came sign number 2. A noticeable drop in mental energy. Not physical tiredness, but cognitive fatigue. She would reread the same sentence 3 times. She forgot what she walked into the kitchen for. She felt like her thoughts were moving through water. People often confuse this with distraction or laziness. But it's neither. Cognitive slowing is a hallmark of early depression. The brain's executive functions begin to dim. It's like trying to run on a battery that suddenly can't hold a full charge. One night, Mila sat on her couch after work and stared at her to-do list. Laundry, meal prep, reply to her mom, fill out that form for HR. The tasks were small, but each one felt like lifting a brick. She kept thinking, "I'll do it in 5 minutes." But 5 minutes turned into an hour, and an hour into bedtime. This wasn't procrastination. This was the early onset of executive dysfunction caused by shifting neurotransmitter activity. Still, she said nothing. And then came sign number 3. A quiet emotional numbing that felt like someone slowly turning down the dimmer switch on her personality. Her laughter felt delayed. Music didn't land the same. The food she usually loved tasted muted. She skipped her evening journaling because she didn't feel like thinking. She didn't feel sad, she felt less. This is the sign that scares people when they finally notice it, because emotional blunting means the brain's reward center, the nucleus accumbens, is struggling to activate. It's the biological beginning of anhedonia, one of the core symptoms of major depression. But in the early stages, it feels more like a subtle distancing from your life. Mila described it once to her therapist as feeling like she was living 1 inch behind herself. But this time something different happened. On a Friday evening, after a week of tiny warning signs, Mila opened her freezer to make dinner. She looked at a bag of frozen vegetables and burst into tears. Not because the vegetables upset her, but because she suddenly realized how exhausted she was pretending everything was fine. The crash wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was a quiet breaking, release. And that moment, that tiny, honest collapse, was actually the most important moment of the entire week. Because it meant she was finally facing what her mind and body had been trying to tell her. This is the part most people never talk about. Depression doesn't always arrive as sadness. Sometimes it comes as slowing, as numbness, as a long, quiet sigh inside your chest. And recognizing these early signs doesn't mean you're weak. Means your brain is signaling for care, for rest, for intervention, for support. If you've ever experienced these early shifts, you're not alone, and you're not imagining them. There is neuroscience behind every emotional change, every mental slowdown, every lost spark of interest. Your brain isn't betraying you. It's asking for help. As Mila sat crying in her quiet kitchen, something surprising happened. Her hands stopped shaking. Her breathing slowed. A sense of clarity surfaced. Not comfort, not joy, but clarity. She whispered to herself, "I know what this is." And she made one decision that changed everything. She didn't wait. She texted her therapist. She took a warm shower. She ate something small. She turned off her phone. She laid down and said, "If this is starting again, I'm going to meet it early." And for the first time all week, she felt a small sense of control, not over her emotions, but over her response to them. That is the moment people often overlook. Depression takes power when we ignore the early signs. But noticing them, acknowledging them, is the first act of reclaiming yourself. Recognizing the earliest signs of a depressive episode isn't about diagnosing yourself. It's about understanding how the mind-brain connection works, how your emotional patterns shift when your brain circuitry starts changing, and how you can intervene with compassion before things become overwhelming. If you've seen any of these signs in your own life, slower emotional recovery, cognitive fatigue, or feeling emotionally muted, it doesn't mean a depressive episode is inevitable. It means your brain is signaling for care, for support, and for awareness. And you deserve that awareness. You deserve that care. If you found this story helpful, stay close to this channel. I create science-backed, compassionate mental health content designed to empower you, help you understand your brain, and give you tools to build resilience. And remember, you don't have to navigate any of this alone. I'll see you in the next video.